The galaxy was a place of war and conquest. Many powerful alien races fought for control, but none were as feared as the Zhurvok Dominion. They were a species of towering warriors, covered in thick armor-like skin, with eyes that burned like fire. For centuries, they ruled through strength and tradition, believing only the strongest had the right to survive. Every 100 years, they held the Grand Challenge, a tournament of war. The strongest species in the galaxy were invited to battle in the Crimson Warfields, a legendary battleground where warriors fought for honor and dominance. The rules were simple: fight, survive, and prove you are the greatest. This year, the Zhurvok sent their challenge across the galaxy once again. They expected the usual answers: the brutal Tarkoth, the cunning Vrexians, the savage Gorlok warlords. Each species had fought before, each had lost before. But this time, something unexpected happened. A new species accepted the challenge, a species the Zhurvok had barely noticed before: humans. The laughter of the warriors. The Zhurvok warlords gathered in their great war hall, watching a holographic message. A human ambassador stood before them, a man named General Marcus Hale. He wore a uniform, his posture straight, his eyes filled with quiet confidence. "The people of Earth accept the grand challenge," he declared. "We will send our finest warriors to the Crimson Warfields. We look forward to the battle." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the warlords burst into laughter. "Humans," one of them scoffed, his deep voice filled with amusement. "They are weak. They are small. Their bones break like twigs." Another warrior grinned. "They have never fought in the Grand Challenge. They have no warrior traditions. Do they even know how to fight?" The supreme warlord of the Zhurvok, High Commander Xal Rath, stood up. He was the largest of them all, his muscles like steel, his eyes glowing red. His voice was like thunder. "If they wish to enter the challenge," he said, "let them come. It will be their first and last battle." The warlords roared in agreement. To them, humanity was nothing but an insect, something to crush beneath their boots. They had no idea what was coming. The arrival of humanity. The Crimson Warfields were located on a barren world, covered in red sand and jagged mountains. It was a place where battles had been fought for thousands of years. Now, it would be the stage for the grand challenge. The other species arrived first, their warships massive and terrifying. The Tarkoth, covered in thick, plated armor, growled as they marched onto the battlefield. The Vrexians, their reptilian eyes cold and calculating, set up their war machines. The Gorlok warlords, covered in scars, sharpened their massive weapons, ready for the bloodshed to come. Then the human fleet arrived. The other warriors expected something weak, a collection of fragile beings who did not belong in war. But when the human ships descended, their sleek design and precision were impossible to ignore. The landing ramps lowered, and the first human warriors stepped onto the battlefield. They were not what the aliens expected. Instead of massive, muscle-bound creatures, the humans looked ordinary. They were shorter than most alien species, their bodies not covered in natural armor. Their eyes, however, told a different story. They were calm, focused, unshaken. At the front of the human forces stood Captain Elias Ward, a tall man with sharp blue eyes and a quiet confidence. Beside him was Sergeant Lena Vasquez, her stance strong, her gaze sweeping across the alien warriors without fear. The Tarkoth general sneered, stepping forward. "Are you the best your species has to offer?" he asked, his voice dripping with amusement. "You look small." Elias simply smiled. "And you look slow." The Tarkoth growled, but before he could speak again, the grand challenge began. The first battle begins. The arena was set, a vast desert of red sand with towering stone formations. The first round was simple. Survive against a beast from the Voidlands, a massive, four-legged creature with black armor and claws like swords. The aliens readied their weapons, preparing for brute force combat. The beast roared, shaking the ground, and charged forward. The Tarkoth roared back, running straight at it with their heavy weapons. The Phyrexians attempted to flank. The Gorlok warriors tried to overwhelm it with sheer strength. And the humans, they didn't charge. They analyzed. Elias and his team moved with precision, dodging the creature's attacks instead of meeting them head-on. They used cover, forcing the beast into tight spaces where it couldn't move freely. They coordinated their attacks, striking at its weak points instead of wasting energy in direct combat. The other species watched in shock as the beast fell, not to brute strength, but to human intelligence and teamwork. For the first time, the aliens felt a sense of unease. This species, these humans, were not like the others. They fought differently. And worst of all, they won. The Zhurvok warlords, watching from the command deck, narrowed their eyes. Perhaps the grand challenge would not be as simple as they had thought. The battlefield was silent. The massive Voidland beast lay dead in the red sand, its thick black armor shattered, its enormous body still. The alien warriors stood frozen, their eyes locked onto the humans, who had just done the impossible. The Tarkoth general clenched his massive fists. The Phyrexians exchanged uneasy glances. The Gorlok warlords growled under their breath. None of them had expected this outcome. Humans had not only survived the first trial, they had won with strategy, coordination, and tactics no one had seen before. From high above, in the command tower of the Zhurvok Dominion, Supreme Warlord Saul Wrath watched with narrowed eyes. His warriors, his champions, had struggled against the beast, but the humans, they had fought with a level of precision that made him uneasy. Still, he refused to believe they were a true threat. Perhaps they were lucky, he muttered. Let's see how they handle a real challenge. The next challenge, one-on-one combat. As the arena was cleared, an announcement echoed across the battlefield. The next round will be duels. Each warrior will fight one-on-one. Only the strong will advance. The alien warriors grinned. This was their specialty. Strength, size, and combat skills were all that mattered here. The humans, who relied on teamwork, would be crushed in single combat. Or so they thought. The first match was announced. Captain Elias Ward of Earth versus General Tharkin of the Tarkoth. A roar erupted from the Tarkoth warriors. General Tharkin was a legend among his people, standing over 8 feet tall, his muscles as strong as steel, his war axe capable of cutting through solid rock. Elias, by comparison, looked almost fragile. He was only 6 feet tall, lean instead of bulky, with no natural armor. To the crowd, this fight already seemed over. Tharkin grinned as he stepped forward. "You should surrender, human," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "It will save you much pain." Elias just rolled his shoulders and gave a small smile. "Let's find out." The fight begins. The battle started with blinding speed. Tharkin charged, swinging his massive axe down with the force of a meteor. The ground cracked under the impact, but Elias was already gone. He dodged. Not by running, not by blocking, just a simple, efficient sidestep. The Tarkoth general blinked in confusion. Humans were supposed to be slow, but this one moved with unnatural speed. Tharkin roared and swung again. Miss. Another swing. Miss. Every attack was powerful, but useless. Elias was always just a step ahead, moving with precision, never wasting energy. The crowd murmured. This was not how fights were supposed to go. The strongest should win. But here was a human, using something greater than strength. Skill. Then Elias struck. Not with brute force, but with accuracy. A sharp blow to the side of Tharkin's knee made the giant warrior stumble. Another hit to the wrist loosened his grip on his axe. And then, in one final motion, Elias stepped in, twisted the axe from Tharkin's hands, and brought him to the ground with a controlled takedown. The entire arena went silent. The mighty General Tharkin lay on the ground, gasping for breath. Elias, standing over him, calmly placed the axe on the ground and stepped back. The battle was over. The shock spreads. The alien spectators didn't know what to think. This was not how warriors fought. They had expected raw power, a brutal contest of strength. Instead, they had witnessed something terrifying. Efficiency, control, precision. For the first time, the other species began to feel a strange new emotion toward humans. Fear. More victories, more questions. One by one, more human warriors stepped into the arena. And one by one, they won. Sergeant Lena Vasquez fought a Gorlock berserker, using speed and quick strikes to wear down her massive opponent before delivering a final knockout blow. Corporal Dariusing took down a Phyrexian duelist, reading his enemy's movements like a book and countering every attack with expert timing. Even the youngest human fighter, Private Jin Park, who was facing a terrifying cybernetic warrior, used intelligence over strength, hacking the enemy's artificial limbs mid-fight, causing them to malfunction. By the end of the duels, the results were clear. Humans were not just surviving. They were dominating. The warlords react. Back in the Zhurvok war room, the warlords were no longer laughing. High Commander Ixalarath clenched his fists as he watched the results. This was not normal. No species had ever entered the grand challenge for the first time and defeated the strongest warriors so easily. The humans were not stronger than the others, but they were smarter, faster, and completely unpredictable. Ixalarath turned to his advisors. "The next challenge must be different," he growled. "No more games. We will break them." The next trial. The blood trials. An announcement echoed across the battlefield. The next trial begins tomorrow. It will not be duels. It will not be an even fight. You will face a true test of survival. Elias and his team listened carefully. They already knew the pattern. The aliens were growing desperate. They were afraid. And when people were afraid, they became dangerous. As the humans prepared for the next challenge, one thing was certain: the war had just begun. The night before the next challenge, the humans gathered in their camp. Their victory in the duels had shaken the other warriors, but Elias and his team knew one thing for sure: the real fight was about to begin. The Zhurvok were no longer amused. They were angry. And when powerful warriors became angry, they made the battlefield unfair. The blood trials announced. At sunrise, a deep voice echoed across the crimson warfields. "The next challenge begins now. The blood trials will test your strength, skill, and ability to survive. There will be no rules, no mercy. Only the strongest will walk away." A massive holographic map appeared in the sky. The warriors saw a deadly landscape: burning deserts, deep forests, ruined cities, and endless mountains. Each team would be dropped into a random location. They would have to fight their way out. But this time, they would not be facing just other warriors. The Zhurvok had released deadly creatures into the battlefield: mutated beasts, mechanical war drones, and traps designed to kill. It was clear this was not a test of honor. This was a test of survival. And the Zhurvok expected the humans to fail. The drop into chaos. Elias and his team boarded their transport shuttle. The doors closed, and a countdown began. Drop in 3, 2, 1. The floor opened, and the humans were thrown into the war zone. Elias landed in a dense jungle, rolling to absorb the impact. He checked his surroundings: trees taller than buildings, vines moving like living creatures, and a thick mist making it hard to see. His team landed nearby. Sergeant Lena Vasquez, Private Jin Park, and Corporal Dariusing regrouped quickly, weapons ready. But before they could move, the ground shook. From the mist, a giant creature appeared, a four-legged beast covered in thick, spiked armor, its eyes glowing red. It roared, shaking the trees. Jin swallowed hard. "I'm guessing this thing isn't friendly." Lena smirked. We're about to find out. Brains over brawn. The beast charge. Most warriors would have fought head-on. The Tarkoth would have tried to overpower it. The Gorlok would have rushed in with axes. The humans, they adapted. Elias gave quick orders. Jin, get to high ground. Darius, find weak points. Lena, draw it toward the cliff. The team moved with precision. Jin climbed a massive tree, getting a sniper position. Darius scanned the creature, noticing a weak spot near its neck joints. Lena, fearless as ever, fired a few shots at the beast's face, making it angry. It roared and charged at her, exactly what she wanted. She ran toward a cliffside, stopping just at the edge. The beast lunged. At the last second, she jumped aside. The creature couldn't stop in time. It skidded on the rocks and fell over the edge, crashing into the depths below. Silence. Jin whistled. Well, that was easy. Elias shook his head. That was just the beginning. They moved quickly, knowing more dangers were ahead. Ambush in the ruins. Hours later, the team reached an abandoned city, skyscrapers broken, streets filled with sand. Lena frowned. Something's wrong. It's too quiet. Elias nodded. It's a trap. They took cover, scanning the area. Then, it happened. A group of Tarkoth warriors appeared, weapons raised. The Tarkoth leader grinned. Your tricks won't save you now, human. Elias smiled. Who said we need tricks? He dropped a small device on the ground. A loud boom echoed as a controlled explosion sent smoke into the air. The Tarkoth warriors coughed. Their vision blocked. By the time the smoke cleared, the humans were gone. Darius' voice came through the radio. Now, from the rooftops, Jin took a shot. One Tarkoth fell. From behind, Lena struck another warrior, knocking him out. Elias moved in fast, disarming the Tarkoth leader before he could react. Within seconds, the humans had turned the ambush into their own victory. The other warriors take notice. Far away, the Jurvok warlords were watching. They had expected the humans to die quickly. Instead, they were moving through the blood trials like ghosts, outthinking every opponent. One of the Jurvok generals clenched his fists. This isn't war. This is something else. Supreme Warlord Sal Rath said nothing. For the first time, he felt something unusual. Doubt. The endgame approaches. By the end of the day, half the warriors had fallen. The blood trials were more dangerous than anyone expected. But the humans, they were still standing. Elias looked at his team as they reached a mountain pass, their final obstacle. The last trial was coming, and the Jurvok would do anything to stop them. But Elias wasn't afraid. He knew the truth. Strength wins battles. Intelligence wins wars. And humanity was just getting started. The blood trials had tested every warrior in the arena. Many had fallen, crushed by beasts, taken down by rival warriors, or lost in the deadly landscapes. But against all odds, the humans were still standing. Now, only one challenge remained, and the Jurvok warlords were done playing games. A new kind of battlefield. Elias and his team stood on the edge of a massive canyon. Below them, a ruined battlefield stretched for miles. Broken weapons, shattered armor, and wreckage from ancient wars. A holographic display flickered to life above them. Final trial. The gauntlet. No escape. No mercy. Only survivors move forward. The warriors still in the trials, Tarkoth, Vrexians, Gorloks, and humans, looked at one another. This was it. Either they won here, or they died. A battle meant to kill. The moment they stepped into the battlefield, the trap was sprung. From hidden bunkers, war drones activated, hovering metal machines with energy weapons. From underground, massive war beasts emerged, hulking creatures with reinforced armor and razor-sharp claws. And from above, the Jurvok's own elite warriors descended, trained killers who followed only one command: And the humans? Elias' eyes narrowed. They're not testing us anymore. Lena checked her ammo. Yeah, this is an execution. Survive or die. The battlefield exploded into chaos. The Tarkoth warriors charged first, roaring as they swung their war axes at the mechanical drones. Their brute strength smashed a few machines, but soon they were surrounded by energy blasts. The Gorloks fought fiercely, using their thick armor to endure the assault. But the war beasts overpowered them, dragging them down into the dirt. Elias and his team moved differently. They didn't fight blindly. They didn't rely on strength alone. They used their brains. Darius analyzed the drones. Weak spot near the core. Aim for the center. Jin climbed onto a broken vehicle, sniping the drones one by one. Lena threw explosive charges, causing the war beasts to turn on the drones instead of them. Elias led the charge through the chaos, dodging between enemies, always moving, never wasting energy. Where other warriors fought with rage, the humans fought with tactics. And it was working. A deadly enemy. Then, the real enemy arrived. Through the dust and destruction, the Zhurvok elite warriors stepped forward. Unlike the others, these warriors were different. They were faster than Tarkoth berserkers, stronger than Gorlok champions, smarter than Phyrexian duelists. And their leader, Commander Krax, had one mission: break the humans. Krax's glowing eyes locked onto Elias. You should never have come here, human. Elias raised his weapon. Too late for that. The hardest fight yet. Krax moved first, faster than anything Elias had faced before. A blur of motion, Elias barely dodged a strike that could have crushed his ribs. Lena and Darius opened fire, but the Zhurvok warriors dodged every shot, closing the distance in seconds. Jin tried to snipe one from above, but they anticipated his shot, throwing a blade that forced him to drop back. This was no ordinary fight. This was a battle against warriors trained for war at the highest level, adapting in the face of death. Elias knew they couldn't win with force alone. So they did what humans did best. They adapted. He analyzed Krax's movements. His attacks were precise, but predictable. Lena noticed something else. The Zhurvok were overconfident. They thought they had already won. Elias made a decision. Change the rules. He shouted, split up. Control the fight. Instead of standing their ground, the humans broke apart, forcing the Zhurvok to chase them. Jin disappeared into the wreckage. Lena and Darius used the debris as cover, forcing the Zhurvok into tight spaces where they couldn't use their full strength. Elias did something even crazier. He stopped fighting. Instead of attacking, he dodged, stepped back, let Krax chase him. Krax growled, "Fight me, coward." Elias just smirked. "Why? You're already losing." Krax lunged, right into Jin's line of fire. A single sniper shot, direct to his armor's weak point. Krax stumbled. Elias seized the moment, one precise strike, and the Zhurvok commander hit the ground. The unthinkable happens. The other warriors stopped. The battlefield went silent. The humans had done it again. They had defeated the strongest enemy, not with brute force, but with intelligence, strategy, and teamwork. For the first time in history, an alien warrior dropped his weapon in surrender. Then another, and another. One by one, the remaining warriors lowered their weapons. They had come to this arena believing strength ruled all. But the humans had proven them wrong. War was not just about power. It was about thinking. It was about adapting. It was about being more than just a fighter. And no species did that better than humanity. The warlord's reaction. In the war room of the Zhurvok Dominion, the High Warlords watched in stunned silence. Their perfect warriors had lost. Their unbeatable trial had been beaten. Their grand test of strength had been rewritten by the humans. Supreme Warlord Xal Wrath clenched his fists. This changes everything. The next step. Elias and his team stood at the center of the battlefield, surrounded by warriors who now looked at them with a new kind of respect. They had survived the impossible, but they knew the war wasn't over. The Zhurvok would not accept this humiliation. They would strike back, harder, more ruthless than before. But Elias wasn't afraid, because now humanity had proven itself, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The battlefield was silent. Elias and his team stood in the ruins, breathing heavily. Around them, warriors from different species lowered their weapons. The Zhurvok's elite fighters had been defeated. For the first time, the great warlords of the galaxy had seen something new, a species that did not rely on brute force, but on strategy, intelligence, and teamwork. The humans had won the blood trials. But the war was not over. Far above, in the massive Zhurvok command station, Supreme Warlord Xal Rath watched in anger. "This is unacceptable," he growled. His generals stood silently. The unthinkable had happened. The humans were supposed to die in the trials. Instead, they had changed the game. But Xal Rath was not done. If strength could not crush the humans, then something else would. Something far worse. A call for surrender. A deep rumble echoed across the war-torn battlefield. The sky above darkened as massive warships descended, their shadows stretching for miles. A hologram flickered to life, displaying Supreme Warlord Xal Rath's monstrous face. His eyes burned with fury. "Humans," he said, his voice booming. "You think you have won." Elias clenched his fists. "Here it comes." Xal Rath continued, his voice calm but dangerous. "You have proven. Interesting. But your small victory means nothing." The hologram changed, showing a fleet of warships above Earth. A cold silence filled the air. "If you do not surrender," Xal Rath said, "your homeworld will burn." The message was clear. The humans had forced the Zhurvok to respect them. Now the Zhurvok would force the humans to kneel. A desperate plan. Elias and his team exchanged tense looks. This was no longer about the trials. This was war. Lena's voice was sharp. "We can't let them attack Earth." Jin checked his rifle. "We should have expected this. They're too proud to accept defeat." Darius looked at Elias. "What's the move, Captain?" Elias took a deep breath. His mind raced. They couldn't fight the warships head-on. That would be suicide. They couldn't run either. Earth was at stake. So they had only one choice. They had to turn the entire battlefield against the warlords. A speech that changed everything. Elias stepped forward, looking at the warriors still standing around him. Tarkath berserkers, Gorlok champions, Vrexian duelists, aliens who had once mocked the humans, aliens who had just witnessed what humans could do. Elias raised his voice. "You've all seen it now. Strength isn't everything." The warriors listened. Some nodded slowly. "The Zhurvok sent you here to prove your worth," Elias continued. "But look at us. They don't care about honor. They don't care about warriors. They only care about control." More warriors looked up, realization dawning in their eyes. "They are afraid," Elias said. "Afraid of a new kind of warrior. Afraid of what happens when we think, when we work together." Elias pointed at the warships above. "Now they threaten my home. But what happens when your worlds are next? What happens when they decide you are a threat too?" The crowd murmured. Doubt spread like fire. The Zhurvok had ruled through fear. But now, that fear was turning against them. Elias took a deep breath. "We don't have to fight each other. We can fight them." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a deep voice rumbled through the crowd. A massive Tarkoth warrior stepped forward, slamming his axe into the ground. "I will fight," he growled. A Vrexian duelist nodded. "You are right, human. We have been fools. The real enemy is above." One by one, warriors raised their weapons. The blood trials were over. Now, it was a war of rebellion. The warlord's last mistake. In the command station, Xal Rath watched in shock. They are uniting. One of his generals stammered. Zalrath's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This was not how it was supposed to happen. The warriors were never meant to turn against him. For centuries, the Zhurvok had ruled through fear. But today, the humans had broken that fear. The first strike. Back on the battlefield, Elias turned to Lena. "Think we can steal a ship?" She smirked. "Oh, absolutely." The plan was risky, but they had one shot. If they could seize a warship, they could turn the Zhurvok's weapons against them. And if they could do that, this war would never be the same. The final battle begins. As the warriors charged toward the enemy stronghold, a new fire burned in their eyes. They were no longer pawns in a Zhurvok game. They were rebels, fighters, survivors, and for the first time, the Zhurvok had something to fear. Not just the strength of warriors, but the unstoppable force of humanity. The battlefield was no longer a place of trials. It had become a battlefield of rebellion. Elias and his team led warriors of different species against their former masters. The Zhurvok, once feared as the strongest in the galaxy, now faced something they had never expected. An army that refused to kneel. But the war had just begun. Above them, massive Zhurvok warships prepared to strike. If Elias and his allies didn't act fast, Earth and every other homeworld would soon be destroyed. They had one chance: stealing the warship. Elias, Lena, Jin, and Darius sprinted through the chaos toward the enemy's command station. Their mission was simple: steal a Zhurvok warship and turn it against them. Lena tapped her wrist console, scanning the battlefield. The main hangar is just ahead, but it's guarded. Jin smirked. Good. I was starting to miss a challenge. The hangar was heavily defended by Zhurvok warriors, all in black armor. They were the last line of defense, the best of the best. Darius cursed. "They're not going to let us through." Elias grinned. "Then we don't go through. We go above." The sky assault. Using grappling hooks from fallen soldiers, they climbed the side of the fortress, avoiding direct combat. From above, they could see hundreds of warships lined up. Their target was a battleship, larger and more powerful than the rest. Jin pointed. "That's the one." But before they could move, alarms blared. The Zhurvok had spotted them. Elias didn't hesitate. "Go. Now." Lena and Jin opened fire, covering Darius as he hacked into the ship's systems. The Zhurvok rushed in, but Elias' team was faster. They weren't the biggest warriors. They weren't the strongest, but they were the smartest. A fight in the skies. The ship's engines roared to life as Elias and his team took control. Darius shouted, "We're airborne." Jin laughed as he aimed the ship's weapons. "Let's give them a surprise." Lena locked onto enemy ships, firing missiles. The stolen battleship unleashed a storm of fire, destroying Zhurvok defenses. Below, their allies saw what had happened. A massive cheer erupted. The humans had done the impossible again. They had stolen the enemy's most powerful weapon, turning the tide. From his command station, Supreme Warlord Zalrath watched in rage. "They're using our own ship against us." A general hesitated. "The warriors are following the humans, my lord. They are turning against us." Zalrath's eyes burned with fury. "Then we will crush them all." The final order. A massive Zhurvok superweapon powered up in orbit, a planet-destroying cannon aimed at Earth. Zalrath spoke one final command. Fire. A race against time. Elias' heart pounded as he saw the weapon charging. If they didn't stop it, Earth would be gone. Lena's voice was sharp. "We need a plan. Fast." Jin checked the ship's weapons. "We don't have enough firepower to destroy that thing." Darius tapped his console, "But we might be able to shut it down." Elias didn't hesitate. "Then we're going in." The stolen battleship raced toward the superweapon, dodging enemy fire. Zhurvok ships chased them, but their own forces fought back, giving Elias' team just enough time. Darius hacked into the enemy systems. Lena fired everything they had. Jin sniped enemy pilots before they could stop them. And Elias jumped. The leap of faith. With only seconds left, Elias jumped from the battleship, landing on the enemy superweapon. The force of the landing nearly knocked him out, but he kept moving. Blaster in hand, he fought through enemy soldiers, running toward the core reactor. Darius' voice came through the comms. Elias, you need to disable the main power source. Elias reached the reactor, ripping out the control panel. The countdown was almost at 0. He took a deep breath and pulled the final wire. The explosion that changed everything. The superweapon shut down just before it could fire. But then the core overloaded. Elias barely had time to react before a massive explosion sent him flying. The shockwave knocked out entire enemy fleets. The Zhurvok forces, seeing their greatest weapon destroyed, began to panic. Zalrath's voice screamed over the comms. No. But it was over. The warlords had lost, and humanity had won again. A new dawn. Elias woke up inside the battleship, Lena and the others standing over him. You did it, Lena said. Jin grinned. That was the dumbest thing I have ever seen. I respect it. Darius chuckled. Welcome back, Captain. Outside the window, the Zhurvok fleet was retreating. The galaxy would never be the same. The final battle awaits. But Elias knew one thing. Zalrath wasn't finished yet, and the real war was still coming. The battle had changed everything. The stolen Zhurvok warship floated above the battlefield, its weapons still hot from combat. Below, warriors of different species stood together, not as enemies, but as allies. The mighty Zhurvok Empire had been pushed back, their forces weakened. Their greatest weapon had been destroyed, but it was not over. Because Supreme Warlord Zalrath was still alive. And he was coming. A message from the Warlord. The hologram flickered in front of Elias and his team. Zalrath's face appeared, his red eyes filled with rage. You have caused enough trouble, human. His voice was low, dangerous. I should have crushed your species when I had the chance. Elias crossed his arms. Too late for that. Zalrath's lip curled. You think you've won. I still command the greatest army in the galaxy. I still control the strongest fleets. Lena narrowed her eyes. Then why are you talking instead of fighting? Zalrath let out a deep growl. Because I offer you one last chance. Surrender now, and I will let your people live. Resist, and I will burn your world to ash. The warriors around Elias tensed. The threat was clear. But Elias had seen what the Zhurvok feared most. It wasn't strength. It wasn't power. It was unity. Elias looked straight into the hologram. We're not afraid of you. Zalrath's face twisted in anger. Then you will all die. The hologram vanished. And then the final battle began. The last warship, a massive Zhurvok dreadnought, appeared in the sky. It was 3 times bigger than any ship they had seen before. Its cannons glowed with energy, ready to destroy everything in its path. Jin cursed. That thing could wipe out an entire planet. Lena tightened her grip on her weapon. We need a plan. Fast. Darius scanned the ship's systems. That thing has shields stronger than anything we've seen. We can't attack it head-on. Elias thought fast. They didn't have the firepower to destroy it. But maybe they didn't need to destroy it. Maybe they just needed to take it from the inside. A dangerous plan. Elias turned to his team. We board that ship. We shut it down from the inside. Jin raised an eyebrow. So, the same crazy plan as last time. Elias grinned. Pretty much. Lena smirked. I like it. Darius sighed. I don't. But there was no other choice. This was their only chance. The infiltration. The stolen warship moved toward the dreadnought, dodging enemy fire. Elias and his team jumped from the ship, using grappling hooks to latch onto the enemy hull. Blaster fire rained down on them, but they pushed forward. They cut through the outer defenses, forcing their way inside. The corridors were filled with Zhurvok warriors, all prepared for battle. But the humans weren't alone. The allied warriors, Tarkov berserkers, Phyrexian duelists, and Gorlok champions fought beside them. This was no longer just humanity's fight. This was a war for freedom. The final confrontation. They reached the control room, where Xalrath stood waiting. He was twice the size of any warrior Elias had fought before. His armor was thick, his claws sharp. Elias raised his weapon. "It's over, Xalrath." The warlord laughed. "No, human. It has only begun." Then he charged. Elias dodged the first attack, barely avoiding Xalrath's massive fist. The force of the blow shattered the floor. Lena and Jin opened fire, but the warlord's armor was too strong. Darius shouted, "We need to disable his shields." He ran to the control panel, hacking into the system as Xalrath swung at him. Elias tackled the warlord, forcing him back. "You're strong," Xalrath growled, "but not strong enough." Elias smirked. "We'll see about that." Then he activated his wrist blade and drove it into the warlord's side. Xalrath roared in pain. At the same moment, Darius shut down the ship's shields. Lena shouted into the comms, "Now, fire HFY thing." The final strike. Outside, the Allied fleet unleashed their full power on the dreadnought. With its shields gone, the massive warship began to fall apart. Inside, Xalrath stumbled, his strength fading. Elias looked him in the eyes. "This is for every world you destroyed." With one final strike, he defeated the warlord. The end of an era. The team escaped just in time as the dreadnought exploded, lighting up the sky. The Zhurvok fleet, seeing their leader fall, retreated. The battle was over. The war was won. A new beginning. On the ground, warriors from every species cheered. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the Zhurvok. Jin grinned. "Not bad for a bunch of weak humans." Lena laughed. "Not bad at all." Darius sighed. "Let's never do that again." Elias looked at the sky. The warlords were gone. The galaxy was free. But this was only the beginning. Because now, humanity was no longer the weakest species in the galaxy. Now, they were the ones to be feared. And the universe would never forget what happened today.